Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, things get wild. Then what? It's a name, fitting for a belled bugle. To Minot, why not, today. You'd think that, nothing really happens there, and you'd be right. Except for just one small thing. 2015 is the year when things get wild. Okay, I'm not saying that again. And twisting and turning is what followed. It's one of those stories where you're kind of like, not really too sure who to believe. If you're born yesterday. The commit to the bit is impressive though, so look forward to that. Now let's get to my bit. And let's give it a go with you. So our story begins in Minot, ND. That ND actually stands for no it doesn't, but we'll swing around. We'll swing around back to that please and thanks. City on the prairies, that is Minot in northwestern North Dakota. Home to about 50,000 people. It has all the amenities you'd want in a city, including a Walmart if that's your cup of tea. On the 13th of November 2015, Christopher Jackson was finishing up his shift there at about 7 AM. He worked the night shift. He was due to be picked up by his fiancée, Angila Wilder. He didn't drive, and he had been texting her through the night and called her a couple of times. The last time they spoke was at 2:10 AM. This was 3 hours after she texted him, telling him she was scared of noises coming from outside the front of their home. When Christopher tried to call her again just after 5 AM, she didn't answer. So he sent a quick text, as he assumed she was sleeping in. She in fact never arrived to pick him up that morning, but he assumed she was just, sleeping in. See, she was in a nursing program at Minot State University, and she had just learned she was also pregnant again. She had 3 kids already. So he got in a taxi, paid the man, got out and walked up his driveway, around the side of the house, and knocked on the bedroom window to wake sleepy Angela. No response. And then he stopped dead in his tracks. Because the back door of the house had been kicked open. He poked the head in the house, shouted Angela's name. To silence was his response, and then he called 911.
I just got home, my back door is kicked in, and my girl ain't answering the phone. My son's inside with her and everything. I'm about to go in and see what the going on.
Okay, why don't you just wait for officers? I'll get them over there.
Police arrived to the house at about 7:20, kept Christopher outside, and entered the home. The toddler was in the house, found safe, and when police tried to enter the master bedroom, they found the door, click, that. So they had to kick it in. Inside, it was dark as shit. When the officers turned the light on, the room was distinct from the rest of the house, which was clean and well kept. The bedroom was in a state, and blood was on the quilts. On the far side of the bed was Angila Wilder, and she was dead. Medical examinations would reveal she had been dead for several hours. By that stage, and her cause of death was a lot, and I mean a metric shit ton, of stab wounds. Angela Small was born in 1985, the younger sister to her bigger one, Crystal. Angela's parents, Tony and Linda, they were both in the military, so in their early life they moved around quite a bit, and eventually they separated. Linda met a new man named Russ, and they ended up in Phoenix City, Alabama. Angela and her sister had a grand old childhood growing up there, growing up members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Christopher Jackson and Angela actually met back then in Alabama. They dated in high school. Angela, however, broke it off just as she was getting ready to head to college, and it would be, almost a decade later before they would rekindle the romance. Angela got a full scholarship to the University of South Alabama, and she met, in 2004, son of a preacher man, Daniel. Angela got pregnant then, and that kind of stuck a pin in her university days. The couple married, they had a daughter, but 2 years later, Angela, she filed for divorce and full custody and got them both. She then went back to sweet home, how How's that song go again? Phoenix City. There, attending the local LDS church, she met another guy she had known from her school days. And that was Richie Wilder Jr. Richie was either from a broken home or just a plain old troublemaker. Bad news, depending on who you ask. If you asked Angela back then, she would have said the former, and they hit it off. He treated her daughter like she was his own. He was thoughtful, he was kind, he was generous. And, hey, life was good. Angela's friends, though, noticed that as soon as she started seeing Richie seriously, there was changes in her personality. Negative ones. Positively. They married in January 2009. Richie adopted Angela's daughter, and they moved to Minot, North Dakota. 25 minutes north of the city is the Air Force Base. Richie had signed up, and Angela discovered she was pregnant with Richie's child in 2010, and they were both just over the moon at that. Can't say the same about almost everything else. Angela got a job at the base, the grocery store in the base. Colleagues noticed she cried a lot. Richie was verbally abusive to her and then graduated to physically. But in 2011, Richie filed for divorce from Angela, claiming that she was the abusive one, not only to him but their kids too. He would write in court documents that she was a headbanger since they married, battering them all. He reported her through the military chains, and she was ordered to leave the home and not contact her children. Social services intervened. And while back in Alabama, her family and friends would say, she was never violent, never had anger issues. In Minot, she didn't have so much support, while Richie had all the support of his officers, and he reported it first. She told him, she was the victim, Richie was the abusive one, and nobody believed her. Everybody sided with Richie, and, to get her kids back, Angela would eventually be forced to undergo counseling, start taking medication for her anger issues, which, she claimed, and her family and friends claimed she didn't have. By the way, I just want to be clear, of course men can and are victims of domestic abuse. It happens all the time. But if my tone seems a little bit flippant here, it's because I know what happens next. Anyway, Angela did everything that was asked for her. She went to the counseling. She took the medication that she probably didn't need. And the couple, they reconciled for about 2 weeks before Richie filed for divorce again. Their marriage finally ended in May 2012, and I feel exhausted just recounting it, so you can imagine what it was like living through it. Richie was eventually court-martialed out of the Air Force, even though a lot of his officers, came to his defense. He was one of the lads. Richie and Angela, they would share custody. Angela, she wanted to move back to Alabama with the kids. Richie every time would say no. She reunited with Christopher. He moved up to North Dakota. Richie ended up working as a nursing assistant at the hospital in Minot and married a woman named Cynthia Becker, kindergarten teacher.
Hello, Mr. Jacob Knudtvig. My name is Angela Wilder. I'm a student nurse with MSU, and I'll be assessing your cardiovascular system today.
Okay.
Before we get started, I'd like to ask a few questions for you. Just general questions we ask everybody.
Angela was much happier now. She was back in school, and she was finally with the man she felt she was supposed to be with. And then she died a violent death. She had defensive wounds and had been stabbed almost everywhere. Crime in Minot had been on the upswing in recent years, much like, what we saw in the case before with James Hendrickson. That one I covered a while back. And it was on the upswing mainly due to that sweet, sweet earth juice. The small community was overrun with people looking to get gold from black gold. Some of these fine folk were not so fine. But this was on a quiet street beside a Lutheran church opposite an elementary school. A young mother murdered in her bed was not the type of crime they saw an increase in. This was not Groundhog Day. Nothing stolen, the car, expensive items, all there. The target was Angela. Christopher was interviewed by the police, asked about the last time he had seen her. And after they spoke to him, they let him make a call. He did not keep his thoughts to himself.
Richie's probably the piece who did it. God, I hope they piece it too. I'm sorry.
Richie and Angela hated each other. This custody shit was still going on. They would alternate weeks with the kids, 1 week Richie, 1 week Angela, and Angela couldn't even look at Richie, so when they would hand the kids off, Christopher would be the one to do it. So the police went and spoke to Richie Wilder.
And I'll tell you, Angela's dead.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Did you kill her?
No.
No?
No.
Did you work last night?
From 7 to 11.
Okay. Where'd you go after you left work?
Straight home.
Can anybody tell us what time you got home?
Cindy.
Your DNA is not going to show up anywhere on her?
No. It's not possible. What even there?
Going to show up under her fingernails?
They noticed he had a few scratches on his face. Now his wife, Cynthia, she, said he was home the entire night. But it's not hard to do basic mathematics. He said he was playing with his son and that's how he got scratched. Good one! They also took his DNA. CCTV was inquired about, on the street and the neighbouring houses of Angela's home. No luck on that. And then they decided to search Richie's car, and it was immaculate. Other than one teeny tiny speck of blood on the passenger's side. Richie, he failed to show up for a polygraph the next day. And as the investigation went on, the police just wanted a bit more about Richie. What can we learn about him? Well, what they learned was that in the hospital, he was working, as a nursing assistant. He was banging everybody he possibly could. He was a real go-getter, but he was well liked, other than when he was fired a couple of weeks after the investigation began for shoving an elderly patient. It was in December that Richie Wilder was arrested for the murder of Angila Wilder. His DNA was found under her fingernails, so case closed. No, wait, sorry. In jail, he stewed, said nothing until March, and then he said something. What he said was, he had a good old scale, good old story for you. He said that shortly before Angela's death, during one of the child handovers, Christopher had come to him and said he had an idea to get both of them full custody of their children, because Christopher was fully sure Angela was cheating on him. He said he would call him one night and then they would catch her in the act together. So Christopher called him one night and he said, it's go time. Right, Richie drove over to the Walmart, picked up Christopher, and then they went over to Angela and Christopher's house to catch her in the act with somebody in bed. When they entered the bedroom, she was alone. Shit. But then, all of a sudden, Christopher just straight up stabbed Angela to death in front of Richie. Interesting story. Fascinating, really.
He drug her off the bed and he kept just stabbing her. I was like, what the f are you doing, man?
And her last words to Richie, her one and only abuser.
Right over there. I touched her neck and feel her pulse, because she was kind of like, and like as I would touch her pulse, whatever, she like leaned up and scratched the mess out of my face. I grabbed her hands. She was just like, I love you.
I mean, it could be, and was, easily disproven though. Get out of here!
When we first interviewed you, Richie, why did you not tell us this?
Well, one, because he kept threatening my family. He's like, if you tell anybody, he's like, I'm going to kill your wife, I'm going to kill your little one, your little one.
CCTV proved Christopher was in Walmart, working his entire 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. The police knew this before they spoke to Richie. They had covered their bases. He ended his speech rather meekly.
Chris did not leave Walmart during those times.
I know he did, I picked him up.
I know he didn't because I watched him on video.
You can stop anytime you want.
I'll stop.
Okay.
He later told another story, much like that one about trying to catch Angela in the act. But this time he said that that night, Christopher texted him saying it had been taken care of. Richie thought to himself, what? What's been taken care of? So he drove over to Angela's, entered the house, found her dead. This story, by the way, also had her dying words being, I love you.
She was just like, I love you.
To Richie, he really was he loved, that was his favorite part, right? But then he said two people covered, dressed in black masks and all that shit, came out here and they said, if you tell anybody about this, we're gonna kill you. Essentially, they were hitmen hired by Christopher to kill Angela. While in jail, inventing new stories, he made friends with other inmates and then told stories to his own defense about one of them telling him that he had in fact killed Angela. Small world. As in, Richie met those two hitmen in jail. The hitman was so guilt-ridden, about innocent Richie being in jail for a crime he didn't commit. Not at all. That he in fact signed a full confession admitting that he had killed Angela. Upon closer examination though, the signature on that confession, the lines in it, were a little bit shaky. As if you were copying someone else's signature. Another plot was to have an inmate commit suicide and then leave a note beside the body, you know, confessing that they killed themselves because they were so guilt-ridden over murdering Angela. No dice on that one though, so back to the drawing board. Then he offered an inmate $1 million to take the rap and say they had killed Angela, or you could also take $500,000 to kill Christopher. They sadly turned him down. Then one night in jail, the corrections officers saw on CCTV Richie doing something under the window of his cell. So when they went in, then they found a part of a broom that had been fashioned into a spear. He was trying to Shawshank Redemption his way out of jail. He didn't even get to the shit pipe. His trial began in December 2016. He pleaded not guilty. Some man, I'll give him that.
A parade of police officers, scientists, and doctors testified Tuesday to the events of November 13, 2015, and the discovery of Angela Wilder's body.
She was laying face up with her feet at the feet of the bed. Her eyes appeared to be partially open. She was covered in blood.
A forensic analyst with the state crime lab said a blood stain found in a car belonging to Richie Wilder's family matched the DNA of Angela, and a DNA test of her right hand finger clippings matched Richie. Perhaps the most compelling testimony of the day came from Angela Wilder's on and off boyfriend Christopher Jackson, who left for work the day before and never saw her alive again.
Have you been able to work since this happened?
No.
Was Angela the love of your life?
I believe so.
Were you looking forward to a future with her?
Yeah.
The jury, fucking bizarrely, found him guilty. How did they come to that decision?
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled action to find the defendant, Richie Edwin Wilder Jr., guilty of the crime of murder.
And he got life in prison. His wife, Cindy, was devastated and said, nay, knew he didn't do it.
Richie's current wife, Cynthia, remained resolute in her husband's innocence.
He's a good man. He's a good husband. He would never do anything that would hurt his kids. I stand by him.
She said she will continue to focus on raising their children.
I am what the kids have now. They've been with me for the past year, and they will continue to be with me.
And that was that. Richie was locked up, transferred to a California federal prison, and Cindy went back to teaching toddlers. Christopher moved back to Alabama. Now the story almost ends there, but it doesn't, because there are some small unanswered questions. For example, Cindy was sticking by her story. Richie never left that night. He never left. Come on, must be joking. There was also blood on the Angela Wilder's blood found beside, on the passenger seat door. But Richie would have, if Richie was the only person who did it, why was there blood there? After some time, Cindy started seeing someone else, a bartender she had a fling with years gone by. He had been in and out of trouble, but was now an electrician. They kicked it off, and Cynthia really loved talking about the case. She wouldn't shut the fuck up about it. And it was when she told this guy that a gun was supposed to be used, not a knife. That's when ears perked up and he went to the police. They went on a date while his car was wired up and the cops listened in. And then this happened.
Are you mad at your husband?
No, like I'm proud of him. I'm just pissed that he got caught and that he got sloppy and impatient, and because we had this thing planned for 2 years. And
what?
He came home that night and he said it got sloppy. She fought back. He had to do what he had to do. She put up a good fight. She did.
Well, I'm sure she's fighting for her
life. She scratched his face, and that's what got him too. Was if it was me, I would have gone back and cut her fingers off. I would have burned them. I would have lit the house on fire. He went psycho on her because the hate and the anger and the frustration, and I totally would have done the same thing too.
I know, it's like I said before, a knife's a stupid way to kill somebody.
Well, he had a gun that was untraceable, and every time he like took it, it kept like jamming, and I guess that night it was old. I helped him clean up. He left again to like dispose of the clothing and the weapon and everything, and I thought we were like in the clear.
Do you think you're a horrible person, or do you think it needed to be done? Because now you've said both.
I fully believe that it needed to be done. Like, Jesus. I helped him. Like, I would leave, like, when he worked nights, I would leave the house at, like, midnight and, like, sit outside her house in my vehicle seeing who came into the house, when her boyfriend left, we had this planned out. And he up. Because he didn't clean the car good enough. One spot of blood in my car.
He's a good husband.
She was arrested a couple of days later, and her trial began in 2018. Now, she would say she was lying during that recording because she just wanted to seem cool in front of this guy. She just wanted to impress him, you know, about murdering an innocent woman. She was offered a deal, 25 years, and she'd be out. She said no. Instead, she took an Alford plea, which is, you know, when you plead guilty, but you don't really plead guilty. And that was hoped would give her a lighter sentence. Shouldn't have given her hope.
You were the one person who could have stopped this nightmare. You were the one person who could have intervened, who could have called law enforcement when Richie Wilder left your home. You were the one person who could have spared Angela Wilder's life. You chose not to do so. I am hereby remanding you to the North Dakota Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation as to count 1, conspiracy to commit murder, to a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.
If you actually listen closely enough, you can hear what's going on in her head. Honestly, harsh. Kinda. Both Richie and Cindy have since appealed, and both were denied. So there you go. And that's this one. That's this story. Your poor Angela, once Richie got his claws in, he would never let her go. He would also never let go of making up new and exciting stories about how he really didn't do anything, and about what really happened that night. Some man for one man. Imaginative. Cindy really should have kept also that little nugget to herself. Maybe in future, if you want to look cool for someone, you know, while you're on a date, you know, instead of telling them about how you were involved in a murder, maybe, you know, just do what everybody else does. Pop your collar. Smoke cigarettes. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch the whole video. And you're hearing me right now. That kind of wraps it up, so here, go on. I'll see you as always real soon in the next old video. How many of you are talking along with me? Because I say the same thing every time. Take care of yourselves. I love you. Like you.